I want to welcome everyone to the emPowered Author Workshop, which is a complimentary kind of offering that the emPowered PR group does. And it's something we're hosting monthly. So if you aren't on our email list, shoot me a note, put it in the chat, or send me an email afterwards and I'll get you on there so you can be aware of the upcoming workshops we do. But typically the first or second week of the month, we'll be offering these free workshops. It's really good for authors who are right on the verge of either publishing their book, have launched their book, or have built meaningful businesses around their book's message, which interestingly enough, most people who write a book end up doing that and never meant to in the first place. So it's kind of fun to do that. And it's really kind of the heartbeat of what the emPowered PR group is all about. So my name is Stephanie Fager. I know some of you all, and this is the first time I'm meeting some others, but it's nice to meet you. As I mentioned prior to the call, I am based here in Kentucky. That's where the Southern drawl comes in, but that also means Southern hospitality, right, Nancy? It means that we've got that going too here. And I am an author myself. So I published my first book in 2018, my second book in 2021. And like most authors, once you've published one, I kind of become addicted to the process and have about 5 more in the lineup. So more coming down the line, but I like to share that, especially on today's webinar, because it's important for me to share and for you all to be aware that when I'm talking about how to write a book that will sell, I'm speaking from experience, both as an author and as a marketer, and I'm blending the two together. And so let's just dive in on today's topic, since I mentioned it, how to write a book that will sell. I bring this up, and I think it's really important. That's why I wanted this month's topic to be on it, because there have been many authors I've had the opportunity to meet either in the beginning of their author journey or right at launch or even afterwards when the books come out. And I've seen beautiful work that they've done and I've seen great opportunities. And then there's also been moments where I've taken a pause and gone, oh no, your book's great. The concept seems really cool, but you might not have written the book in a way that makes it most marketable. Like we might have missed this opportunity to ensure that the book is going to actually be sellable, something people will want to buy. And as an author myself, I remember thinking back in the beginning of my kind of author journey when I was writing my book, and you guys feel free to put in the chat too if you felt this way. But when I started to write my book in the beginning, it was really meant for me. Like I just needed to get this book out. I never thought about selling it. Yes, Stephanie, the marketer over here, wasn't thinking about how do I sell the book quite yet. I was thinking about I've got this message and it's really important to get the message out. And it wasn't until after I had drafted the whole book that I said, oh, wait, maybe I need to focus on how this book is going to sell and reevaluate my process to make sure that from the very beginning, the book has legs, it has the potential, it has the opportunity to reach the people that it really needs to. Because if you think about it, writing a book is a big undertaking. It's not something that we do lightly. It's not something that we do without thought. And there are a lot of ways that you can dive in and share a message without writing a book, right? You could do a blog. You could do a YouTube channel. You could go on the speaker circuit. You could just tell friends and family about it. You could be a teacher. Like there's so many ways you could share a message. But if you're choosing to share it as a book, it's important that that book, that product becomes something you can sell, right? So I wanted to, I took some time reflecting back myself and thinking, okay, what is it that makes a book marketable? And I've pulled together what I call the Write to Your Reader framework. And it really kind of nestles down to the nitty gritty of this. This is what I've seen with the authors I've been able to help. But any author that's come through, we always seek success, but the ones who are the most successful are the individuals who not only just wrote a book, but they wrote a book for other people. They didn't write the book just for themselves. They wrote it for somebody else in the process. So I've noticed both like as an avid reader, as a book marketer, that the ones that are really sticking out, the ones I get excited to read and then tell people about, are the ones that were written for me, right? The ones that weren't written just because the author had something awesome to share. They're the ones that were written because the author had a zone of genius, an amazing skilled knowledge or understanding or a purpose for writing the book. And in the process of doing that, they wrote it for me, their potential target audience reader. So the Write to Your Reader framework is something I'm going to walk you guys through today. It's something that I go in depth on with authors that I work with one-on-one in my Empowered Writer program. And so today I'm kind of pumped to give you guys a glimpse of the framework and how you could be thinking about it in your book, wherever you are in your book journey, whether that book is in concept in your mind, in concept on paper, even if the book is out in the public, this framework is still something you could use to help ensure that your book, its message, and any derivative offering that comes from the book has extensions to reach the people that not just will want it or need it, but will buy it. And those are things that we'll talk about in a minute because that's really important. That's actually kind of three different things there. So in my program, I always start with this, and I think it's important for you guys to consider this. So I would pull out a piece of paper, make a little note. If you're watching this video later, pause this and kind of reflect on this. But I want you to ask yourself, this is the first place I start with literally every author I work with. And that is, I want you to consider and reflect upon and understand what success for your book will look like. And I think that's so important in the beginning to think about. What does success look like? Understanding kind of your goals for your book and your success metrics are pivotal. And the reason I bring that up is because some people come to me and say, success for my book is selling 1 million copies. Other people come to me and say, success for my book is selling 1 copy to the right person and it changes their life. Some people come to me and say, success for my book is building a business. And so the book itself might not even be what's most important. It's the fact that the book becomes the conduit to building a business. There's so many different reasons that you might want to write a book, but understanding your goals and your success metrics are really important in the very beginning. The other thing before in the program that I was sharing with you guys, before we dive into the framework, I usually encourage authors to consider is the mindset movement they need to kind of navigate to ensure that they're writing a marketable book. And this is hard. It is hard. I share from experience because I got feedback on my first book and my mindset wasn't ready for that. And I remember having like a breakdown in the middle of the road and the expressway, no joke, mental breakdown when I was getting feedback because I hadn't considered how the book was going to how my beta readers were going to react to the book. I just knew it was great, right? I just knew it was great. And I got some really awesome feedback, which helped me make that shift, but I wasn't ready. And so mindset is a really big deal, a really big thing to think about. I want you to be thinking about what your goals and success metrics are and what kind of mindset hurdles you might want to get over and navigate through. And the Empowered Author podcast, this particular season 3, will go in depth on those. So if you've not listened to it yet, pull up season 3 of the Empowered Author podcast and you'll get a little bit more meat on those 2 topics. But today I take you through the Write to Your Reader framework. And that's really the third step in the program, that the Empowered Writer program that I walk people through. And what that is it helps you create clarity on why you're writing the book. So I want you to envision kind of like a funnel where on the top it's really big and in the middle it's kind of more together and then the bottom it's bigger. This is kind of the vision of the Write to Your Reader framework. And it helps kind of you navigate the different steps to get there. So there are 3 steps that we're going to go through today. And the first one is, really focused on, well, let me backtrack. Before we get to the first one, I want you to think of a couple things too. When you think of Write to Your Reader, that means you're writing a book that you care about, but you're also writing a book someone else is going to care about too. And that seems really easy, but it is not for many people because that's where the mindset comes in. We get so focused in our mind on what we want to get out of the book process that we're not thinking about who needs our book most and how are they going to be impacted by it. So on this piece of paper you have, make a note, target audience, and you can go back later and reflect on this. But this is another important part. If you ever work with a marketer and they don't mention your target audience or audiences, it might not be the right marketer because that's where we always start. You can't be everything to everyone, but you can be something meaningful to someone. So in a world that has like between 7 and 8 billion people, your book might have relevancy to all 7 to 8 billion people. But if you try to target all of those people, you're going to fall short because not all those people have the same pain points, the same challenges. Instead, I want you to think back and pause and kind of ask yourself these three questions. One, who needs your book's message? And when I say need, I mean like really needs the message. I mentioned this, and I want to pause and say, you might be asking yourself, I don't know, does anybody need my book? My book might just be a feel good book or a self-help book. Like maybe is that as needed as like a business book? Yes, for the right target audience. Yes, they need it. And there is a difference between needs and wants in my opinion. On my website, the empowerprgroup.com, I have an article about needs and wants. And it's really important to figure out how can your book pivot from what someone wants to what someone needs. I want you to think about yourself. Think about your budget that you have every month to be able to sustain the cost of living and the lifestyle that you've chosen. The likelihood is you have some funds that you put over here in one bucket that are for your needs, right? Like your food, your shelter, your clothing, whatever. And the other side is kind of like your discretionary funds. And this is the wants. This would be the nice to haves. I would like to go on vacation. Maybe I would like to have a massage. Maybe I would like to get my nails done, whatever. Now, interestingly enough, the needs and wants of everybody are different. So, for instance, some people might see a gym membership as a want. That's me because I don't like going to the gym. Don't judge me. I'm looking at Nancy. Don't judge me, Nancy. I don't like going to the gym. But for other people, that gym membership is like a critical need because they value so much the importance of exercise and health in their lives. Same thing with readers. So some people might look at a book and go, oh, that's a nice one to have book when I go to the beach. You don't really want your book to be a beach read because then once a year they go, oh, it's great. I would love to pick up that book before I go to the beach. Instead, you really want to make sure that you find the people who need your book, meaning they've already kind of allocated funds for a message that your book brings to life. So that's something to think about with your target audience. So understanding kind of who needs it and why do they need it? Why do they need it? How is it game changing for them? And better yet, once you get to that need, then you're gonna understand who's going to invest their time and their reading it and their money buying it. So I always say there's two types of investment that we ask readers to do. It's the financial investment to purchase the book, but there's also the time investment to read the book. If you have a short book, that might be a smaller time investment that we're asking someone to do. But if you've got a longer book, you might be asking them to do an 8-hour investment. And that's a lot of time for somebody to say, yes, I'm going to do something with this. So as you're thinking about your target audience, I want you to think about those three things. Who needs your books? Who needs your book? Why do they need it? And who is going to invest their time reading it and their money buying it? If the person that you originally thought was the right target audience and they need your book and you know why they need it, but they're not going to invest the money and the time to do it, that's not the right target audience. You want to restart at the beginning of that and think through what that could look like. All right. Once you have clarity on your target audience, then you can start writing to your reader. Too many times we write the book before we understand who needs it and will buy it and invest in it. So starting with understanding kind of your overarching message and then understanding who's going to read it, you can start making sure that your book is written in a way that your reader will want it. So what does that mean? So you understand your why, your goals. You know how, and you realize how you want to achieve them. But to do that requires someone investing in it, right? In either the book or its offerings, depending upon what your goals and success metrics are. You don't want to let yourself get in the way of that process. And that's when I said I had a meltdown when I got feedback on my book. That was me letting myself get in the process in the middle of it. It was emotional. Like it's very emotional creating and writing a book, something you love. That is a journey of yourself, of giving so much of you in that process. So finding a way to be objective in this process or someone to help you in that journey is always nice because you might get a little too attached there. But understanding that when you are writing to your reader, here's what happens. You're writing a book that someone needs it. That same person is probably going to love it. And then they're going to share it with other people. Now, if if you know anything about me, you know I come from a background in nonprofit marketing and PR and communications, which means I am taught from the ground up on how to spread a word, spread a message, empower people with very, very limited or any budget, which is why I love working with authors in various stages of their book marketing journey, because many authors come to the table saying, I don't know what to invest in. I don't know what's worth my money. I don't know if I have any money to invest. Awesome. If you focus on your readers first and foremost, you're going to save so much money because they will do your word of mouth advertising for you. If a reader loves your book, then they're going to start telling people about it. And that is like gold in the book author journey. So that's what we want them to do. We want the cheapest form of advertising because it's also the most trusted form. So, all right, you've got your target audience, you figure out who those people are, you understand how to reach them, and you're starting to write a little bit to them. Now we get to this framework, and there's different ways that you can navigate this. This is the way that I have used and how I coach other authors to use it. So pick and choose from this what you find most helpful for you. But it's broken into three parts. It's broken into kind of your manuscript, which is the meat of your book. It's broken, then that's the first one. The second one is the book. And I'm not talking about the manuscript there. I'm talking about the thing you can touch, this thing you can feel, the thing you can smell. Is I'm weird. I like to smell my books. And then the third thing is the action. What do you want people to do from your book? So I'm going to kind of walk you through those three portions real quick. So we'll start with the first one, and we'll start with your manuscript. This is the words on the paper. This is the meat of your book. And you might be right here in this part of the process. As you're listening to this webinar or you're participating or you're finding this information. And I actually think, this has the potential to be one of the most impactful sections if you really want to write a book that will sell. And if you want to really, make sure that you're leaving that impact, you've got to start with writing a good book in the first place. I have a lot of people come to me and say, Stephanie, how should I market? What should I do? What's my first step? And I always say, like, did you write a good book? Like, you got to write a good book. Don't think about the marketing fully until you've got that book done. So make sure you've written a book that your target audience is going to love. And that's where the manuscript and this content comes in. It's pivotal. So you want to write something that's going to give value, something people are going to talk about, something that they will find that their investment in you and your book and in reading it was worth it. Because like I said earlier, then they're going to go out and promote it for you. So it might require you to do a little bit of research here, and I want you to think about either some of the pages you've already written, the book that you're concepting, even the book that you've already written, because and even if it's published, there are things you can do in this framework as you're creating derivative or additional content that can leverage your marketing efforts for your book. But I want you to reflect on this manuscript you've written and your ideal reader, that target audience. And I want you to think about a couple of things. The first thing I want you to think about is tone. And I want you to make sure that you think about how does your target audience, what tone is going to pull them in? And you personally, what kind of tone do you want to set the stage for your reader? How do you want to come across to your reader? What I mean by that is kind of the general vibe, the feeling, the essence that people are going to get when they read your book. Is this serious? Like, is the matter really serious? Is it playful or lighthearted? Is it a tone where you want them to feel like they're sitting at a coffee shop with you, which that was the tone for my book that I was going for. Is it, that you want to be kind of stern and confident and come across like the message that you're sharing? Do you want it to be friendly? Your tone, whatever this is something that you want to make sure your reader is going to find is in alignment with the message you're sharing. And you also want it to be in alignment with what you want to get across. I think, if I'm being honest, I'm going to be honest here. Much like thoughts, there's really no new thoughts in the world. There's really no new unique kind of book topics out there. But what makes your book unique is you. You are what brings the uniqueness to the conversation. And you want to make sure through your tone that you're kind of creating that environment. I just finished a really great book. It was called Soundtracks. If you've not read it, it's by John Acuff or Acuff. However you pronounce his last name. It's phenomenal. His message was not earth shattering. It was about mindset. So if mindset's something you're still trying to navigate, that would be a good book to pick up. But the message wasn't earth shattering. However, how the book was written, it was the only book I've ever read where I literally laughed out loud. I'm sure my husband was like, "What are you doing?" I laughed out loud in the morning when I was reading it because his tone was just perfect. It hit me in a way where I'm like, I get it. I got it. And I've read many mindset books, but his was the first one that hit me in a way that made me think of things a little bit differently, all because of his tone. Hey, and I even wrote a book on mindset. So this is speaking pretty big, if I'm saying that I think it was that great. But I've read other books. There's a book I'm reading right now, which I will remain nameless because I don't want to negatively impact that author. But the tone in that book is so boring. The message is probably phenomenal, and I'm going to get through it. But that tone is not pulling me in. It's not riveting. It doesn't feel good to me. I'm not walking away feeling empowered. I'm probably not going to tell people about that book. So I want you to think about the tone of your manuscript and specifically in how does your ideal reader need that information and how do you want to come across? Another thing to think about is the style of your book. Is it conversational? Is it academic? Does it need to be written in like a business setting or does it need to be written more casually? I want you to think again back to your ideal reader and you as the author. And what's the energy you want people to get from your book? And that could impact the style and not just how it's written, but even how it's laid out. Like, does it make sense for you to have chapters or subsets in your chapter? Does it make sense to have some icons and graphics throughout, quotes, etc.? All of that would go into the style that you are trying to engage your readers with. So the next thing when we're talking about the manuscript is length as well. So depending upon your target audience, some of them are going to have more time investment or less time investment to give. And also depending upon the type of book you're writing. For instance, you might be writing a children's book. And if you did that, depending upon your target audience, you don't want to write a 300-page book, right? The children would go, their eyes would gloss over if you were there. However, on the flip side, if you're writing a nonfiction business book, a 30-page book might be too fast, right? So you want to understand in the length side of the house, how long let me backtrack. How much time investment will your ideal reader give you and allow that to play a part of the length of your book. Don't look at this as something that is like set in stone, but what you could do if you don't know the answer to that is do some research into your competition and take a peek at what other people in the space might be doing. That'll give you an inclination if you kind of average it out on the typical length of a book and how it makes sense for you to potentially fit, because again, that's probably how much time investment your ideal reader will invest in the book. Okay, so that's part one. We're looking at the manuscript. Want to make sure that manuscript, both in the tone, in the content, in the length, all of that stuff is in alignment with your ideal audience, your ideal reader. The second part is really the book. So that's where when we look at our kind of funnel, we're at that inside part. Let's talk about the physical book. It's the one that you're going to feel, you're going to hold, or you'll put on your Kindle. But this is really important too when we're talking about how to write to your reader and writing a book that will sell. I hate to say it, you guys, but people judge a book by its cover, and the cover is really important, as are other elements of the physical book. It's what pulls people in a world where we have so many ways that you can publish a book and you can become an author. There's lots of great books out there. There's lots of not so great books out there, and you want to be seen as one of the great ones. So you have to find a way on the physical book to kind of stick out. So I want you, while you're kind of looking at competition from the previous one, when we're investigating length and trying to understand that, take a look at other books out there in your genre that reach your target audience and and kind of start to make a list and identify a couple things. We're going to start with your cover. When you're looking at other books to get some ideas, or you yourself are doing research on your ideal reader, think about, does your book need to be hardback? Does it need to be paperback? Should it be an ebook? Will your target audience ever read an ebook? I don't know. Should it be all three? That's important to think about. And I know even when we talk about paperback, and this is a little tidbit about me. There's so many different types of paperback you could do. You could do glossy, or you could do this aqueous coating that's my personal favorite. The inside cover pages could be this kind of like cream yellow-ish page, or they could be crisp white, which is my favorite. But there's different things even on that physical part that's going to make a book feel progressive, or really, really grounded in its roots and its information. It's going to make it feel like so many different ways, just beyond the specifics of that texture of the book. So be thinking about, do you need the hardcover? Do you need the paperback, the ebook? Also, when you're taking a look at some of your competitors, look and see what size books they're doing. So, weirdly enough, books can come in all shapes and sizes. There are, like, my first book was a 6x9, which tends to be about typical for a business book, or a self-help book. But my workbook was an 8.5x11 because I wanted people to write in it. There's sometimes you'll go even smaller if you want your book to feel more pocket, like a pocketbook, something they can put in their purse, or something really bigger, if you'd like to, so that will, help them read it in different ways. So the size of the books can play a big role in this as well. And so definitely be taking a look at your competition and seeing the size and how and where do you kind of fit into that. So there's lots of reasons to be thinking about the different sizes. Also, think about that cover design. Should the cover be more artistic, or should it just be words on a page? Should it be really bold or soft? Should it have a picture of you or picture of something else? All of this will play a part and be a part of playing the role of pulling your ideal target audience in and making sure that specific target audience will ever even pick up your book. So looking at competition out there can help you identify very quickly, unless you're working with a marketing team or a publisher who should have research in this space. This will help you kind of identify how you feel like your book specifically and its cover could kind of be in alignment. Another thing to think about too are colors. Colors are so important, and they elicit different feelings that come with them. So in a previous episode of season 2 of the Empowered Author podcast, we talked all about colors as it relates to author branding. And these particular colors, some elicit energy and sadness, or confidence or growth. I mean, it's crazy what colors can do. When you're doing your competitive research, you might notice a trend on some colors, capture that, and that might help you with making some decisions on what you think you would to kind of artistically and graphically direct as your graphic designers pulling together what your cover could look like. But it also might let you know where there's an area of opportunity where you might be able to stick out amongst your competition. So evaluating, your all of these different things about what the book itself could look like are really important. But the last thing I want you to think about here regarding the book part of the Right to Your Reader framework is the price point. So sellable book might be more sellable at a different price point than another price point. And I don't mean up or down on the spectrum. It could go anywhere in between. So my dad and I laugh. My dad is in the used car selling business. And he tells me, Stephanie, sometimes I know this is a really good price for a car, and I put it at a certain price point, and I don't get any calls on the car, even though the car is in great condition and it is great for that price point. He said, sometimes then I will up it a little bit, and weirdly enough, it will sell if the car is priced a little higher, because there's this perceived value that comes with it. Same thing on the other end, right? You might price something really high, but your ideal audience isn't willing to give their discretionary funds at that price point. They might prefer to come a little bit lower. And at that point, you would want to figure out a way on reaching them where they're at. That's why it's so important to understand your target audience and how to reach them. So for a book, you might want to sell the book for 25 bucks. Like I might want to sell my book for 25 bucks, but my target audience isn't going to pay much more than 15 or 16 because of what the competition is like, or the other way around. Maybe I'm like, I'd be really happy with a $19 book, but the reality is the $26 price point is what my competition is doing. And my ideal reader might think that there's something wrong and that the book's not long enough, not full of enough value if I don't price it right. So understanding when you're looking at your competitive research, you might want to make notes too of some of your specific price points that they have, and it'll help you identify where people are paying, what that range is that they're paying. All right. Third point, that was the second one. So we did your manuscript and the right to your reader framework. That's kind of the bigger part. We funneled into the book, and spending some specific time talking about your book. And now we're opening back up to the action that is in alignment with your book. So if you are writing a book, I don't care what type of book you're writing, even fiction books, even though typically the authors I support are nonfiction. I think this is still true for some people in the fiction side of the house too. But most of the time, if you're writing a book, your goal is to invoke action in some sort of a way. Now, sometimes that is small action, sometimes it's larger action, but you want someone to do something with it, right? Like if it's a fiction book, you want them to like be transported and get a break from life, or at least that's what happens when I read fiction. However, I have read my favorite author, Jodi Picoult, is a fiction author. And when I read her books push me to think about things I would have never thought about. That's why I added fiction in here, because it's true. Her books are focused on relevant, timely topics in today's world. And it inspires me to sit back and think, how can I be better and do better and think different, all because of how she's written her fiction book. Same thing in the nonfiction space, that our goal typically as we're writing a book is because we want someone to do something, right? If you wrote like John Acuff wrote about soundtracks, which is the mindset that's going on, the different soundtracks you have in your mind. His goal is for us to get a hold of that and change our lives for the better and do great stuff with it. So you want there to be action. And I really, like to sit back with authors and think about what's the end goal of your book and how do you want them to take action? What do you want them to do personally in their life or professionally? And this is good to kind of reflect upon as you're writing your manuscript as well. I want you to think about that. What is that action that you want them to do to take because they've read your book? Even at a small level, it's just a personal action. But in addition, what's a larger action you want them to take? What's something bigger that they're supposed to do because they've invested this 5 to 8 hours of reading your book in their career, in the lives of other people, in our world? I mean, and I believe that books can do that. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in my life and the lives of other people. So how can your book instill, invigorate, evoke action? And as you're thinking about this, I want you to consider, how are you letting readers know how they can take action? Are you giving them a way to connect with you? So that way you can keep the conversation going. Are you making it clear, is the action that you want them to work with you? Is that something you're putting in there? Is it in the book? Have you shared it with them? Like, not that I don't think our readers are smart, but many times if we can let them know where we want to go with the information that they get, the better. I've seen some really awesome books that even in the back, like they have a learn more or the next steps portion of their nonfiction book. They even create like here's 5 actions you can take from this. And here's what you can do with it. So that automatically allows this book to be something that's making a difference in their lives and beyond. And so that's also, some people use that as a lead magnet. So the action at the end of the book is, well, here, this is something that we can do together and I can be a part of that and connect with me and let me help you do that. So, be considering, if is this book a one and done, or is it something that you want to be a door opener for something bigger? And have you thought about what that is? Many authors that I work with haven't even thought about these things, which is why I put together the Write to Your Reader framework, because I felt like it gives people the guidance to start where you love. And the reason you're writing books, you have a message to share, you have information you want to put on the page, you have something you want to give back to the world and to an individual. You start with that and understand it through the lens of your target audience, then you can get to the point where you're shaping your manuscript, you're shaping the specifics of your book, and you're creating a way for people to take larger action all in this one book. It becomes something that's not only going to reach your ideal target audience and reader, but it's going to make it worth your investment in creating your book. Because what will happen is that book will be something that you will be able to then take and and sell. You can sell to individuals or groups. You'll be able to use it to align with your goals and your strategies. It will be something that can help you reach your success metrics because you're writing a book you love in a way that someone else will benefit from and they're willing to invest in it. I think that's the big key and something that many authors just have a moment of struggling with. And I think the Write to Your Reader framework can help you get there. It helps you dig into the manuscript, the book, and the action. Um, a book, in my opinion, is kind of this avenue for giving, and it's an avenue for giving always. And I tell the people that I get to collaborate with that giving doesn't mean that you have to give in to something or someone. You know, have to, your manuscript, this process is not giving in to your ideal reader. It's not giving up. Believe me, there are times when you're writing a book, you just want to wipe your hands and or wash your hands of it, step away, and it's exhausting. I know that, I've been there. And I don't want you to give way, like just give in and give way to everything. Instead, if you focus on giving value and in writing in a way that will help your ideal reader see your message as something that's important in their lives and then take action from it, then both of you win. You and your ideal reader. So this Write to Your Reader framework, like I mentioned earlier, is a glimpse into the emPowered Writer program that I have. It is a signature program of the emPowered PR group. It's one of the 3 programs that we spend a lot of energy on. The Write to Your Reader framework is really meant to help writers who are pulling together their book right before publishing, to make sure that that book is marketable. The emPowered Author program is really meant to help authors launch their programs, launch their books, and relaunch later if you've already launched it and you need help redoing it and reinvigorating kind of your book. And the third one, the emPowered Authorpreneur, is meant to help authors who have built a business or want to build a business around their book's empowering messages. So the Write to Your Reader framework is a part of the emPowered Writer program. I won't spend much time talking about it today, but if you're interested in learning more about the emPowered Writer program, I will put, there'll be a link here in the description for the replay. And for those who are on today's call, it is empowerprgroup.com/the emPowered Writer. I'll put that in the chat here shortly as well. So that wraps up kind of the overarching views of what I was going to share today about the Write to Your Reader framework and how to write a book that will sell. But I wanted to see if there were any questions, and if there are, you're welcome to come off chat. If not, or you could put it in the chat box. And I've received a few questions prior to the call too that I will start kind of digging in right now. So here is a question that I've received. It is, how can I get some feedback to ensure my manuscript is one that was written to the reader? So how do you get feedback? That is a very good question. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier on in today's workshop about when I got feedback on my book before it published. Some publishers call this kind of beta readers. I created what is called an editorial board. It's a group of a handful of people who I know and trust, but also are ideal readers of mine that I know are going to give me feedback, not on the specifics or of the sentence structure or grammar, but on the message in the book. So even if you self-publish, I will be the first to say you must have an editor edit your book, even if it's line editing. You can get content kind of conceptual editing too, but the line editing is pivotal. So don't miss that step. If you self-publish, if you have a publisher, they're not going to let you. But the beta reader process is really important because it allows you to get feedback from people after you've written your manuscript to see how they react to it and what has worked and what hasn't. You don't want people in this group who are going to nitpick just for nitpicking's sake. You also don't want people to be a part of this group who are going to give you what you want to hear, because that's as nice as that is, you don't want to hear what you want to hear just for the sake of wanting to hear it. You want to hear what you need to hear, and that's a different thing altogether. So I want to make sure that, pull together like a handful of people. You don't want too many or too little. For me, around, I don't know, 5 or so is a good number for that editorial board. And let them clearly articulate to them what they can do to help you in that process. And give them, a couple of weeks to really review your manuscript and weigh in. That is a great way to get feedback before you've invested in the publishing process, before your book's out there, to not only get feedback, but to also get some testimonials. You might even be able to build your launch team with some of these people. All right, I have a second question that has come up, and it is, let me see, how do I know who my target audience is? And that's a great question too. And that's something that many marketers can help you with. That's something we can help you with at the emPowered PR group. But if you want to do some digging on this first, what I would like you to do is I want you to think about your 2 things. We're going to think about you first, and then we're going to think about your target audience. I want you to think about you, not as the author, not actually anything related to your book. I want you to think about yourself, and I want you to think about things in life that kind of charge you up, that you get excited about, things that you're like, yeah, absolutely, this is so important to me. We'll talk about the gym membership as an example. You could very easily say anything health is something in my world that I freaking love it, and I will always invest in that. And you can capture, as you start to think about that, like, yeah, so there's some pain points that I have when it comes to exercise and health, and there's some things that are non-negotiables and what have you. And as you're thinking about this, you're actually realizing you are somebody else's target audience. And these are things that they're thinking about if they're writing a book around exercise or overall health or what have you. So understanding you and understanding things that make you tick might help you get into the mind of your ideal reader a little bit. So I want you now to make the pivot and think about the message that your book has. What's the overarching message of your book? And then I want you to think about who is going to benefit most from your book. Who is like game changing, who would be game changed if they got information on your book. And then I want you to keep digging. So understanding your target audience requires you to dig deeper. And your beta readers could also help you with this, guys. So don't feel like you have to do this alone. As they read it, you could even ask them, who do you think needs this book? But you'll likely walk away with like understanding demographics and sociographics and psychographics, and understanding kind of buying behavior, understanding their ages, their gender, their race, all of these kind of elements that are on the demographic side, is kind of their median income. You don't have to go super in depth, but understanding their buying habits. What are things that they will invest in? What are things they think about? What are things they struggle with? This is where the shift comes from your book being a want to a need. When you can speak to their needs, that's their pain points, that's their struggles. And when your book is a solution to that, that's when they'll invest in it. So asking yourself some of these questions that on understanding will help you understand and kind of pull out who your target audience might be. So if you have any other questions after you listen to this webinar, either now live or later on replay, you're welcome to reach out to me directly, Stephanie at empoweredprgroup.com. You can comment on their YouTube channel description if you'd like, or in the YouTube channel link if you'd like, and I'll respond there too. But happy to answer any questions you might have. We will be posting this video on YouTube later today or tomorrow. We'll send out a follow-up email so you have access to this. You can come back and listen to it as many times as you'd like. I also recommend too that if you're not subscribed to our podcast, the Empowered Author Podcast, I would consider that you do that. It's a weekly podcast where we share information about different topics, and the current season is actually all about this topic. So you would probably really enjoy that. You can go to the empoweredauthorpodcast.com to get access, or you can go anywhere where you listen to podcasts, and it will be called The Empowered Author, a marketing podcast for nonfiction authors. Listen in, leave a review. Always makes me happy when I see that. And if you want to learn more about the Empowered Writer Program, just visit empoweredprgroup.com/the Empowered Writer. You can get information there about what that program is all about. And you can also schedule a free 15-minute chat with myself if that's something that interests you, or we can dig a little bit deeper here. And we'll send a link there in the follow-up to this particular workshop. So that will also be something too. If you're like, Stephanie, I want to get your thoughts on target audience or something else that we've talked about today, I'd be happy to do that. And make a note to join us for next month's workshop, which next month will be focused on building out content for kind of scheduling your content out for 2022. I can't believe it's 2022 next year. So we'll be thinking through what that looks like, and I'll share with you some ideas on how to be prepared as an author for next year in your marketing strategy. So thank you so much for participating today, for listening in, and I hope you got a couple good nuggets of information. As I close out every podcast, I like to close out these workshops the same way too. And I usually share on the podcast that now I have empowered you. It's your turn to go empower other people. If you know somebody who needs this information, please share it, and follow me on social. I'd love to continue our conversation. Hope you have a great day and have enjoyed learning how to write a book that will sell.